Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Well, good morning and hello, kids,
Where?
and welcome to season 4 and episode number, taking a look, 632 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025, and it is a lovely day here at the Ottawa Beaver Lodge. Nice blue sky, bright sun. About to come in. Right now it's just hidden by a building for me, but I can see all the sun rays coming down, so looks like it's going to be a nice day here. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, hey. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corbin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Well, we've got a fun one for you today, kids and cubs. I'm very, very excited about this. But before we do anything else, Mr. Grizzly, how is your mental health doing today, sir?
Well, sir, despite the overtime loss by the Ottawa Senators to the Toronto Maple Leafs last night, I'm doing pretty good. You know what? The thing, that game from start to finish was Ottawa's game. Ottawa outplayed them. Toronto obviously has better defense because they were outshot, knocked down pucks, stopped passes, blocked plays. Toronto played a good game. Ottawa outplayed them. Toronto got a lucky break on that second goal. It was a bounce off an Ottawa player into the net. It was a garbage goal, but it still counts. So yeah, that was a much closer game than the score would have you believe. And I was talking to some Toronto folks last night who were saying, yeah, they got away with that one last night. It really was. That was Ottawa's game. They outplayed them from start to finish. And I think it's just, look, Ottawa was really hoping for a split,
Right.
just home and home. So they come back to Ottawa on Thursday, and let's see what happens. Momentum is in Ottawa's end. How this series ends up, I don't know. I want to see it go 7 games. I want Ottawa to win. If they don't win, yes, I'll be disappointed, but I won't be crestfallen because after all, they haven't been in the playoffs for a few years. And there's a bunch of playoff rookies. There's 2 guys on the team that have been in the playoffs before. 2.
Right.
So
yeah.
Sanderson and Giroux, and that's it. Nobody else has been in the playoffs before. So they're learning quickly and adapting quickly. They played a great game last night. They deserved to win. They didn't. That's how it goes,
Oh, yeah.
That's hockey.
But it's like I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh my God, 2 nights in a row. Because like Montreal the night before was like they were down. And then they caught up. And then you get to overtime. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
So you do all that work to catch up. It's like you got the momentum and then it's like, no. It's like the same script 2 nights in a row. It's like, damn.
It's frustrating, but what can you do?
I know.
That's how it goes.
But hey, they're fun and competitive matches.
They're great. It's been great hockey.
You're in it, right? And that's what counts. And the result will be what the result will be, but you're in it. So the teams are not letting us down. It's just like,
You don't want it to, it didn't go the way you wanted it to. There's nothing you can do about that. You just
yeah.
roll with the punches. And hey, look, here's how I see it. I don't play for the team. They don't pay me to watch the games. So if they lose, bummer.
Yes.
It's not going to ruin my
Yes,
life.
exactly.
Tomorrow.
Yes. Yes. A regular reminder to not get so personally invested. All right.
I don't play for the team.
Yeah. So, kids and cubs, I'm very excited about today. As you will see here, of course, the boss, Alistair McBear, doing the performance evaluation.
I didn't know you were in town until this morning.
I have a doctor's appointment later on today, and then I have to go back. So it was just a quick in and out. Yes, I was
quick in and out.
I was trying to do it when I was here last week at this. Yeah, I know. I know. I walked right into that one.
I was thinking Clockwork Orange, the old in and out. Clockwork Orange.
So no, I was trying to do it last time when I came to vote and do them all together, but it turns out I couldn't get an appointment to coincide, so I had to come. Anyway, going to get vaccinated. There we go. Yes. So, kits and cubs. Well, yesterday, for those of you who were patient enough, and we had to, I had to abandon it because, as you know, Restream was trying to update while we were doing the show live.
Has been finicky.
Yes. So we couldn't finish. Yes, what we tried to do yesterday, and I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do with that one because it's
I haven't
not
figured
really
it out yet.
Podcastable. But
yeah.
So we'll
I haven't even downloaded it.
Right. Yeah. So we'll try to touch on some of those
because I looked at it at the end and I went.
Yeah. We'll try to touch on some of those things, or maybe try to take two later on. But for those of you who were able to get through that with us yesterday and have a little bit of an idea of the NDP platform, you're going to like this show today because today we have as a guest the person we've been talking to you about since Monday. I saw him on Twitter. I think the thread was on Twitter, and he was writing a thread about the Liberal platform when it came out, and was very thorough. And then I asked, okay, I'm looking at it, and it seems like fair, and doesn't seem too partisan on one side or that type of thing. And I asked, did you happen to have something about the NDP? And of course, he did. And again, fair. And I thought, well, hey, and I was going to read it in, and I thought, well, why not just ask him to come on? So while we were doing the show on Monday, I was asking him if he would like to come on, and he said yes. So we negotiated for today, and we were hoping that the Conservative platform would be out, and I must admit that cynical me was not confident that there would be one out by this time. And he said very graciously that he would be willing to come back if it wasn't out before. But the political gods shined down on us. And, well, Pierre Poilievre did decide that he was going to follow through with trying to put out a costed platform. And, well, we have been telling you for a couple of weeks now that we can't wait to see it because it's probably going to be a disaster. Especially since the moment he decided that he was no longer cutting, well, at least he said out loud, no longer cutting dental care and pharmacare. And then when he decided all of a sudden that he was going to support the industries and workers affected by the tariffs, because he was using the counter tariff money to give the tax cut, remember? So he couldn't use that money a second time. So, and then we thought, wait a minute, his math is not really going to math anymore. And then, well, he was going to cut the foreign aid budget, but all of a sudden, but not Ukraine, which is a major part of the foreign aid budget. Okay. So we were wondering what it would be if we would put one out at all. And it seems with all the questions during the debate, because for about a week now, there's been a lot of questions at press conferences and at every place that he's been going, like, guys don't have a platform yet. Like, we don't even have an idea who your finance minister would be yet. I mean, what's wrong here? And then since then, we've noticed that Pierre seems to be disappearing from Conservative advertising.
Well,
The last two ads don't feature him in it. The closing
all
ad.
I've seen has been former Prime Minister Stephen Harper lately.
Yeah. And I keep on wondering if there's it's like, I know he's the former prime minister, but he also is like the chair of AIMCO, and he also is the chair of the IDU. And is there maybe like a third party Elections Canada violation somehow, some way?
Well, that's entirely plausible. But the other thing is, you know, the Conservatives are so desperate that they're trotting out a former prime minister who was never that popular to begin with, and many years later is less popular, especially when all of the
Mhm.
terrible things he did have come to light for millions of Canadians. Now, there's some people going, "No, that was a good policy." What, handcuffing us to China for 31 years? How is that a good policy? Uh,
Especially now, right? So, uh, but again, we always have to remember the caveat is that people on our side of the political ledger think that on that side of the political ledger, he is the guy that brought them to the promised land once. There, he's a star. So he
and ran
does it. It plays
deficits
differently.
nonstop.
It hits differently with them. I'm just saying it hits differently with them, but it sort of gives a sentiment of really trying to save the furniture and not reaching out broader, right? And trying to really turn out that vote that they know is theirs. So with all of this going on, the Conservatives released their platform. So I've been paying a little attention to the news about it and all that kind of stuff. I have my impression, but I do not want to color the discussion by sharing my impressions first. So, kids and cubs, because I would like to hear what our guest says. So, kids and cubs, if you please, put your paws up and give a big round of applause for believe policy consultant is what he told us, for McMillan Vantage, who did study at the Monk School and at McMaster. So he comes very credentialed, and we like experts here.
Yes, we
Please
do.
put your paws up. Josh Marando, welcome to the Beaver Lodge.
Hello, everybody.
Well,
How are y'all doing today? Very excited to be here.
Yay! We're really happy to have you.
We're happy to have you, sir. We're excited to have you. We, as Mr. Beaver just said, we love experts. We love experts. We love expertise. Somebody who is an expert actually in my field. I'm not going to tell anybody how to adjust policy or budgets because that's not my area of expertise. I'm an audiovisual production sweet guy. You, sir, are a gentleman who can inform us and myself of how things are supposed to be. So
Thank
please,
you,
the
thank
floor
you,
is
thank
yours,
you.
sir.
I'm very excited about this election because I feel like policy has taken um, a much more center stage role compared to the Ontario one, uh, and it's good because in my job I spend most of my time uh, translating what the government says in policy and legislation into what that actually means in real life, and then seeing what they need in real life and translating that into policy. Uh, so that's my favorite thing to do is listening to people who have the real on the ground experience and seeing how that sort of manifests. And then from there, I like to judge and see what I think is best and fits best with what our goals um, are, and see what the goals that the parties are stating they're trying to achieve, um, if they're actually achieved by the platform. Because I think we saw that yesterday,
Mhm.
especially with the conservative platform. That's not always the case. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Before I'm going to
Yeah.
start saying anything, or although I find it hard to contain my smile, I will still wait for more details like this because I've only seen what's in the press, and I've been looking around stuff like that, and commentators that I trust or whatnot. But again, like Mr. Grizzly, this is not particularly my domain. I may have missed something, so there may be something, some 4D chess or something, some big complex strategy that I'm not able to foresee up front. So I'm not willing to prejudge. But as you know, kids and cubs, I had a feeling. um, Now, before we do that, however, I just wanted to ask you a little question, because when we do that for all our guests, how is your mental health doing today after, especially reading that?
It was yesterday. It was not the best. I saw some of the things in the conservative platform, and I was actually a little bit sad. There was some of the points in there that I think they just had to goat the Liberals and have some sort of war separate from the economic sort of discussion.
Mhm.
But then I saw a lot of the very poignant critiques of the platform. I saw a lot of the discussion that was going around it, and that made it feel better. And this morning, got a nice walk with my dog outside. It's nice and sunny, so feeling good today. My mental health is great so far.
Okay.
We'll see how
So
the campaign goes and how it affects it.
Nice.
so if I understand this, you were reading it yesterday and you had an impression, and then you thought that maybe you might be in the minority, and then you sort of looked around and you thought, oh, wait a minute, I'm not so bad.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like
Okay.
anytime there's a one conservative platform, people tend to be a little bit less expecting of platform details, and especially when they're an opposition party, they expect less details, a little bit more of those big promises. I feel like they're a little bit nicer towards the numbers. We saw two experts that they set up top had reviewed it and thought it made somewhat sense. It was pretty light language in there too. It was not like they were co-signing it and said that they did it. They said in some world this makes sense.
Mhm.
So I was there and I was like, this doesn't really check out to me. But it was like in the middle of a work day, so I, like most normal people, can't just like only focus in on this one thing. And then when I was reading through it, I was a little bit nervous, but then as I saw the chatter, I think people were starting to see through it a little bit, and I think it's mostly because it was so different than what we heard up to this point in the election. We heard all these big promises. We expected something that was going to be at least somewhat similar to the Liberals. And instead we got this little pamphlet that has 17 pictures of the leader, a nice little spread, and then a few little high level talking points here and there, that really make it seem more like a student council platform than a prime ministerial council, than a prime minister platform. Like, that's really what I thought. I said, like, this reminds me of student council platforms where you have all the pictures of you. It was not. It was a big miss. It was a big miss for a party that I think had a lot to gain from a strong platform. And I always love good policy.
Well,
I would have
all
loved
style,
to say
no
it was
substance.
great, but it was not. It was not my favorite.
Yeah, it's all style, no
Wow.
substance, like zero substance.
Just like that.
You know,
Yeah.
it's been sloganeering.
Like no foreplay.
It's been
just
sloganeering.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. I wasn't expecting you to drop it like that.
Well, it's one of those things where, like, what's in it? Like, really, what's in it? And I think that they had a lot of good ideas up front. They're not like, clearly they're smart people. And I just don't know I think that they probably looked at that and said that this isn't the best, but they had some sort of strategy behind why they did it. I think because they wanted to do a front runner campaign that didn't have a whole lot of policy. But it's just so high level and so uninspired, I'll say. And especially compared to even the NDP and the Green platforms. It was really, I was really surprised. I was really surprised by that by the conservative platform yesterday.
Okay. So before we go into it, just top line, you've read all four. Like this top line, if somebody wanted like the quick, like sort of like 4 or 5 minute.
Yeah.
Who's BSing us the least?
Honestly, I would say the NDP, and that they are presenting exactly what they are. They're not saying that they want to have they don't have any sight line into when they got rid of the deficit. They say we want to do this upfront spending in programs, in operating spending. We don't have as much of a capital plan. Sometimes they do a little bit when talking about the previous track record. They do a little bit of they're a little bit hyperbolic at times. But in terms of what their plan would be and what they're going to advocate for, they're very straightforward. And they're very clear with their priorities, and everything that they say is in line with what their stated priorities are. Part of that, I think, comes from the fact that Mark Carney is a economist, not a politician. I think that he is less boisterous and out there than Jagmeet is.
Yep.
So it's always easier to present yourself in a way that is more calm savvy when that's what's in your mind. But I really do think that the NDP platform is the most, if you're just looking at the clips, if you're just seeing what you can see online and not one of those like sort of hyper involved individuals, I would say
Mhm.
the NDP is the most consistent with what you would expect.
Okay.
And that's an important point to make, sir, because the reason we have a show, the reason we do this is to try and get as many Canadians informed as possible, because all people get these days are sound bites and short clips and social media shares.
Mhm.
So we decided we're going to try and inform Canadians as much as we can and as many as we can with in-depth analysis. Now, sometimes we miss it. That happens. We're human, but we do our best to try and communicate to the populace what is actually happening, what is going on. And this is just another instance of quite literally the Conservative Party, who back in December of 2023, Melissa Lantsman will release the policy once the writ has been drawn. Well, they were drawn a little while ago, and all they did was let's just carbon copy Mark Carney's stuff and send it into ChatGPT, and let's see how they can adjust it to make it look like we did it. And that's all I get. And again, it's slogans.
Mhm.
There's nothing to it. There's
Yeah.
nothing to it.
Okay.
And
So-
how can we cut these things and say that, well, if we cut these things, we're going to make X amount of millions and billions of dollars, which makes no sense. I don't see how you make
None.
money from cutting most of these environmental measures,
Yeah.
because in the end, businesses are probably going to pocket that profit, and they're not investing in all of this new technology, a lot of this Canadian-made technology on how to sequester carbon and how to innovate their manufacturing, how to invest in our economy in order to build a new clean economy. I don't see how getting rid of those incentives to do that will build the economy more. We're just going to see probably a lot of these businesses taking that profit or not really change that much. We're going to see a lot more stagnation when you just get rid of all of those incentives to actually innovate.
Yeah, I don't see how it generates more revenue for the treasury either.
No.
That's
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Yeah.
not.
so.
But
So the pardon?
I was going to ask, sir. I just wanted to. What are your thoughts, sir? If we were to introduce a marginal tax rate like they had in the 1950s in the U.S., when companies that earned over X number of dollars were taxed at 90%, and what they did was they turned around and put that money back into R&D, into their employees, into employee programs, into savings programs, into help people get ahead. Because quite frankly, the way that the economy is structured now, it's the trickle down effect, which has never benefited anybody but the top 1%.
Mhm.
And it will never benefit anybody but them. So do you think that having a marginal tax rate of 90% for X number of dollars over, it's just, you only hit that 90 percentile when you earn over, say, let's say $100 million as a company, at arbitrary figure. Do you think that would incentivize companies to do the right thing, or would they just hide more money in offshore tax havens like Bermuda that was created by Stephen Harper?
I think yes. I do think yes, and I think it's because it and if you could look at numbers in terms of like, oh well, when does this come in? You can do a whole bunch of different sort of economic analysis to see what point do they intersect to where it starts to disincentivize businesses from growing. I frankly don't think it will ever disincentivize businesses from growing, because in the end, you're looking at what's benefiting the shareholders too when you invest and build your company in the future. Even if you're not getting huge profits, you're still growing the footprint of the company. So yeah, I think that's huge in terms of having people invest back into themselves realistically. Like it's not about taking it and putting it towards XYZ. We really need a huge shift in how our economy works, and it's going to take a whole lot of money. If you look at what the Inflation Reduction Act did in the U.S., there's actually some really great pieces on that that talked about how companies could save money or get tax credits. And it's not only through upfront grants, but it does take resources from the government to do that. So yeah, I think that'd be huge. I think that'd be huge in terms of what sort of economy we're looking for in the future. Because if we aren't changing, it does look pretty bleak. So we do actively need to have a government that looks towards how do we build an economy of a future. And that's what changes. Change to me isn't just getting rid of regulation and reinforcing the industries that we had 50 years ago, 40 years ago. It's seeing how those industries can grow and develop and change, so that we have what we need now, and we're good in that sort of intermediary in between the transition, but then also we are still transitioning and going towards where we need to be.
All right. Good.
Well said, sir. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So the NDP's platform is the one that's the more consistent to what they're saying. Now, with regard to economic soundness, however.
Yeah, I think that the NDP platform is very consistent, that people see what they're selling and what they're putting out there. Unfortunately for them, and I think we're seeing the polls, it's just not what people want right now. In that they're being very straightforward, in that our focus is on social services, our focus is on operating spending, which in reality is important. But at this point, we're really looking for nation building. We're looking to separate ourselves from the US, separate ourselves from China, at all of these places where we've been so entrenched and so reliant on. And we're trying to build ourselves sort of a little bit from the ground up here, as somebody who they rely on, because we want to be the ones who are ultimately in control of our own economic destiny, which is, I think, what people are more looking for. And that's not what the NDP is offering. So I think that's sort of why it's reflecting in the votes. And I would agree, it's not what I think is the best option for right now. But I would still, I do still like having that voice in Parliament. Like, they're one of the ones where I look at that and I say, I'm glad that that's what the platform is, because I think it balances out operationally when we are in government for the next 4 years. Having a strong opposition like that does make sure the government is being held to account on those social aspects, is important. So I'm glad to see it there. It's not personally something that earned my vote, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot of their reductions in the polls. But I do think it's at least honest and fair, and represents what their party is being right now.
So you would say, would it be fair to say that you don't think it's necessarily government worthy, but it's definitely official opposition worthy?
No, not official opposition worthy either. I think it's government worthy. I think it's having a voice in Parliament worthy.
Okay. So if you're an NDP voter and you're diehard like this, and you are worried, like the targeting, they might forget you. So we're going to be here to talk for people like you. Like, it really is true to that. You can vote safely. You know that if that's your thing, you've got that with the NDP for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So the Greens, with regard to what they say and how their platform matches up to it, does it line up?
Yeah, I actually do also enjoy the Green Party's platform. It's also not one to govern, and that it is obviously quite light on the international stuff. Looking at the economy building areas, they actually are quite good when it comes to building a clean economy. I think it is one of the ones that shows sort of the most further, I guess, extreme in how you can do the most in the most little time. So I think it's pretty consistent. I think as a party, the infrastructure of the party in terms of being able to hold up to what that is, in terms of being able to actively push forward and effectively lobby the government for that change and act as a voice for that change, is less effective. I think that their new leader is actually a great speaker. I really do like him. And he seems to have a really good, I guess, finger on the pulse. But I think the NDP suffers more from just a party infrastructure problem and a need to really rebuild and find their seriousness, because even when you look at what they're saying publicly, most of what their platform I hadn't seen before. Like their platform had some really cool bits in terms of like looking at relying heavily on wealth taxes and corporate tax hikes, like the NDP does. Looking at I'm looking at my notes here because I did have notes on every single one of them. They had a pretty big vision for economic transformation focused on localism and sustainability, and a really progressive tax policy. But you're not really seeing them as being credible on those things, because that's not what they're focusing on. And that's not how they're sort of selling themselves. And I would probably tend to agree in that you can write something in a platform, but in terms of are you able to carry that out? That's another question. But I do think they have the longest platform, to their credit.
Okay. So if is there one or two things in the Green platform that, for example, the Liberals or the Conservatives should actually steal? The NDP?
I would say they have a pretty big guarantee on they do have an emphasis on the guaranteed livable income, which I do think is important. I think it's one of those ones where it's probably better done by the provinces in terms of actually being carried out. But I would love for that sort of assistance to be looked at in general, and that's my progressive nature coming out. And also I think in terms of a progressive vision for a climate future, just because others aren't planning for it, just because we see the US is not participating in that green transition anymore, because we're seeing a lot of critiques of the EU, doesn't mean that we should stop trying. I think we're realistically not going to be able to rely on oil and gas forever. Our natural resources sector has so much opportunity. Looking at what the future of the clean transition looks like, and looking at critical minerals and things like that. So I think that focus and really looking at greening the economy, I also really would have liked other parties to take. It seems like the Liberals will take that approach, and I assume when they talk about transitioning the economy and they talk about clean manufacturing and a lot of those incentives, that is a priority. But in the end, those are investments in the future, and theirs is focused more on right now. Whereas the Green Party does have a pretty good long range, I think, focus in terms of what they're saying would have pretty good long range impacts. So I do think there's some great parts in there as well. A little bit more high level, a little bit less sort of understanding, I guess, the intricacies of government and how these all interact. And I'm sure if Mark Carney were to read their platform, he would have a whole bunch of like, well, actuallys, in terms of how they would happen in practice. But I would say that's where parties can really learn from the Green Party is that just because for I think justifiable reasons, public has sort of turned away from valuing that in politicians. In practice, I would love for them to look at some of the methods that the Green Party proposes for growing our economy, and see what would work there.
Okay, that's interesting. That's it. Go ahead, sir.
I was going to say, would Mark Carney say, "Well, actually," or "if I may"?
He probably would. Well, he probably would say, "Well, three things. I'll break this up into 3 talking points, and then I'll get your question," like he did the debate. And I would love to hear all of it, and I would be learning and be interested for all of it.
Excellent. All right. So let's move on to the Liberals. They released theirs on the 19th. A lot of people in the political analyst community said it was a mistake to do that and to release it at all at this point, because they set themselves up as a target. Little did they know that the Conservative platform would be what it was at the time when they said that. And they said that releasing it on the 19th was clever because it was on a long weekend holiday. So it gave people not a lot of chance to kind of look at it. But at least if you wanted to, you could see something if you hadn't voted yet while there was still some early voting. After reading it, did it look like they had something to hide, or did they just look like they were, the new guy is here and we're doing it as fast as we can. This is as fast as we got it out.
Well, I don't think it was this is how fast as we got it out. I'm sure there was a lot of strategy in that. I think most of the strategy that we were in terms of what the Liberals were waiting for was just for the debates to be over.
Okay.
Which to me does make sense. I could see having one of them with a huge platform before the debate. That probably would muddy it up and just open them up to a lot of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
So I get why they did that, and I do think that was a smart choice. My issue with a lot of the what the commentators around the platform was that they were all critiquing the strategy of it, and that it was like, oh, such a large platform. They didn't have big sort of statements for the media to click onto, so they just looked at what would get the most clicks, which is looking at 140 billion in new spending, all these things. It wasn't communicated strategically, which fair. I understand why they would say like, oh, you want a more mini platform that touches on the most important parts.
Right.
But I don't think that would be true to what Carney is selling and what this Liberal government is selling. I would much rather have a more substantive platform before a long weekend that you can really dig into. And with any document that long, there's going to be things that you can critique. Look at the Liberal platform. I have things that I would critique. I would have loved to see more on the childcare plan. I would have loved to see more on the pharmacare stuff. I would have loved to see more in crime and justice. I think the intricacies of their crime laws have some room for growth, especially. But overall, I think it was the most strong policy-minded platform. It was the one most in line with what I think Canadians really want and really need. And I think most people across the country recognize that. Because even when I was looking at on Twitter, I was getting a lot of people, obviously, who dislike the Liberals commenting on it, and most of them are commenting based off of trust. In that, why would I trust the Liberals to do X, Y, Z? Why would I trust them for this one project, one review rule when they haven't done that in the past? For me, I think that's why I liked this platform, because it shows they're less concerned about the political theater of it all. Because in the end, that to me is what hinders the most progress.
Right.
And they're more concerned with what will actually benefit the country, in that they're not going to tie things up in review because they're scared of what the political ramifications might be. And they're not going to start like sort of unnecessary antagonistic relationships with provincial governments just to sort of reinforce their own political perspective, or at least I would hope so. And that's what's indicated here. I think because you have Mark Carney at the helm, who is not a politician and is here because he is the best one to fill the role. For right now, if he doesn't, if after 4 years he doesn't feel like he's the best one to fill the role, I don't think he would stay. I think he's in it because he sees him as the best one for the job, not because he wants the attention of it. And that's certainly not something I can say about Poilievre. And honestly, I don't even think that's something I would have said about Trudeau. I think Trudeau was very good at the public part of it. I think that's where he thrived. Whereas Carney is kind of the anti-Trudeau in that he's really fitting for the moment, and less so of that sort of retail politician. Because even Trudeau really outperformed a lot of, and I think would have, even if he was still the leader, tends to really do well during elections. He's very good at elections.
Right.
And then I think after the election is where people see a lot of those critiques coming in. And I'd much rather somebody who focuses more on getting the full plan out there, being really trying to make sure people understand what they're saying. And then somebody's going to do a mini platform. I would have been really disappointed if the Liberals did a mini platform, personally. Even though I know that's what a lot of the pundits were saying that they strategically should have done.
Okay. So compared
It's not something I would
Yeah,
expect from Mark Carney,
It wouldn't
though.
have been him.
Just
It would
who
that
he
that
is,
to
right?
me would have
exactly.
been
Yeah.
the strategists running the campaign. That to me would have been
Mhm.
he's backdoor, the liberal, whatever all these other people say happened to for Carney to get into this role. That would have been what that was. This to me was actually somebody um,
Mhm.
who believed in the plan he was doing. I don't think it was just Trudeau's plan. That is so silly to me because so much of this is based off of what has happened within the past few months.
Mhm.
Um, I
Mhm.
think that
Mhm.
is, I think that's incredibly silly to say. I'm sure that there was parts of it outside of probably the economic vision, the foreign vision, things like that, um, where he relied on and where the team relied heavily on research and resources that were done prior. But to say that this is just the platform that would have come out if even if Trudeau was leader, no matter who was leader, is to me just absolutely false. It is like
No,
so
no.
shaped by the
Yeah.
vision that was put forward specifically by Carney's liberals.
Okay. So again, so basically, from what they've said and what's there, seems to be rather true.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I would
Now,
say it seems to be rather my one caveat
okay.
is that what they say is that it is very detailed in that on the election sphere, you can only say so much. And I think we saw this a lot about Carney in the debate where he's like, this, and this, and I won't go into more detail onto all the specifics of it. But because it's very specific, um, it is challenging to convey in speaking notes or key messages.
Right.
So I would say that's the one. I would say that platform and I would say it's important to read all platforms, but in terms of understanding past what is just sort of out there publicly, I would say that one is probably the most important to read. Um, I also think it probably would be important to read the Green parties in terms of what's most different from what's out there, but that's just because nothing's out there on it. Um,
Mhm.
but that's just because of the level of detail that's in it. Um, so you would get a lot more. There's a lot more to the story than probably what you could see in just those few clips. Um, but in terms of the vision that he's presenting to Canada, I think it absolutely is in line uh, with that, and does that really really better than I would have ever expected in a election.
Okay. So when you're saying about the details, like, are you saying that we're not only getting an idea of the what, but a bit more of the how, a bit more of the tactical, not just the
Yes.
strategic?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So he's like looking at all my notes. He's talking about like the specific types of nation building products of projects um, that he'll go for. He's looking at the trade diversification corridors. Like these are all things. The East West corridor. Looking at by Canadian procurement strategies. Like a lot of these, um, and talking about where he wants to look at that. So for clean tech, for vehicles, he's looking at the specific production that he'll want to amp up. Um, and a lot of those go past sort of what you can get from that top line. Oh, we want to invest in Canadian economy. We want to build the Canadian economy. We want to reduce our reliance on the US. Well, this is how. And especially when you look at um, his defense platform, I think that's when you see it the smartest, in that he acknowledges that Canada's strategic defense area with the US is less so our size and scope, obviously, but it's where we are.
Mhm.
It really is in the Arctic. Um,
Mhm.
I think that we can and should meet our NATO targets um, because we should really secure the Arctic, especially looking at where China and Russia are and how they're also
Right.
looking into it, and how that gives us leverage with the United States, because that's how you identify threats coming in from those areas. Like our
Right.
radars, um,
Right.
our tactical uh, expertise is of
Yeah.
huge value to the United States. They would be in a really precarious position if
And
we
it's a
were not in lockstep with them on defense. And it's those sort of intricacies that the platform recognizes, and explains that. It doesn't explain all of that in detail in the platform, but it does say that we are going to go into invest in these specific areas.
and
So they are going to protect ourselves, build out our military, and this is how they're going to do it. And they
that's
do it, in my opinion, in a very smart way.
Yeah, that's an area of high competency for us, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm. We have a
Specific.
very smart military. We have a very smart defense team. The challenge with our military and defense, from my understanding, comes from like outdated equipment. We have challenges in terms of like resources on bases. We have a lot of in terms of like we have a lot of recruitment challenges. We're seeing skills gaps, obviously, like we're seeing in any sort of area. Uh, but in terms of the intelligence that's in there and the um, strategic minds and what we can actually do, I think we have a very smart military, and this acknowledges and leverages that.
Right. Mr. Grizzly, do you have any questions about the Liberal section?
Not at this time, no. I just take in everything Josh is telling us, and again, it's wonderful to have an expert in the field come in and talk to us about these things. You
I
know,
actually read it.
yes, yes. And what do I have to say about this? Well, I agree with what you're saying when it comes to NATO spending. Number one, number two, I know Mark Carney does as well, and number three, I just watched a congressional hearing the other day where they had generals in the United States of America who came forward and stated how important we are and how important our military is in guarding North America, especially the North, and how strategic Canada is and how much of an important partner we are. While their president's saying, well, we subsidize. No, you don't subsidize us. You never have.
Mhm.
Everything we do out of our own pocket. We always have. And the thing we always have done very well with our underfunded military is punch way above our weight class. That
Absolutely.
has always been the case and will always be the case. Carney has talked about how he is going to invest a lot more money into the military right across all Army, Navy, and Air Force.
And Coast Guard.
Building
Yeah.
and Coast Guard, that's
The
correct
Coast
too.
Guard
Yes,
as
yes,
well.
which is not
Yeah.
military, but still he wants to invest in all of those things. It's how to run a budget. So I'm pretty excited and pleased. And with the 7.5 million Canadians that have voted early, I have a great deal of confidence going into this election, knowing that an adult in the room will be in charge.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that that's a huge point in terms of looking at how we work with the US, is being able to know and leverage the fact that absolutely, let's not pretend that the US does not protect us. The US absolutely protects us
Absolutely.
and has for a very, very long time, for as long as our friendship has lasted. But we also protect them. And I would say to a higher degree because of how much more uh, in focus they are, and that we really are integral to their safety too. Uh, and that's something that it's important that we leverage in these future trade talks that are going to happen after the election. Both the prime minister and the president have said, as soon as the election's done, we're going to go in and see what a new relationship looks like. And we need to be able to leverage those things, including our defense, and not sit down and say, well, we haven't invested in our defense because we haven't invested in our defense enough. But that doesn't mean that our defense is weak by any sense of the word.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. Now, a lot of people are looking at the top line number. We were focusing a little bit yesterday of showing the difference between the capital and the operational spending. And we were talking about a gentleman named Thomas Watson, who was, trying to bring it into regular terms, describing it as if, spend $100 on food, that's okay. If you have to borrow $100 to buy food, that's debt. If
Mhm.
you borrow $100 to then build yourself a little garden that's going to produce more than $100 worth of food for you, that's an investment. So
Mhm.
it's trying to bring it down to that level here. Everybody's focusing. You got Mr. Poilievre's going, he's more spendthrift than Trudeau. It's going to be $60 billion debt. Now, it seems to be that it matters debt accumulated for what purpose. And I remember when you were talking about the NDP platform, you were saying it doesn't have the nation building piece. And when I'm hearing the conservative critique about all the budget, the thing in my head is like, but so you won't build the pipelines or the ports or the high speed rail because we're going to have to do that, right? We're doing the nation build. We have to do that. So you can't complain that it's going to cost money.
And the
You got to
conservatives
ruin the
said that
roof.
they
You got
would
to
build
fix
it,
the
and
roof.
then in their platform, it wasn't there. So there's a big difference in terms of what they were saying they were going to do before the platform, and then what's committed to um, after the fact.
That's the conservative platform, right?
In the conservative platform, yes.
Okay.
Uh,
So the 60 billion from the liberals, is this a terrible thing? Because like as soon as it was out, oh my God, that's going to blow the AAA credit rating. It's $60 billion in debt. We're sitting there, well, no, because people look at forward tracking
yeah.
as well. So
Also look at what has happened the past however many years, even under Harper, looking at our GDP, how our budget sort of went. We've had many different challenging budget years. Carney is not going to be the one to fully mess up our budget. Let's just, in terms of the person at the helm, regardless of what they're saying, to say that he would blow our AAA credit rating, to me is ridiculous, and I think that they know it's ridiculous too. I
Absurd.
think that this splitting out into operating and capital expenditures is actually very important, because in the NDP platform, they are saying they're not looking for any path to balance, and a lot of that comes from operating spending, which is spending that does not have an end date. If you end something in operating spending, you end it. You get rid of the jobs, you find efficiencies, you get rid of programs. These are things that contribute to the operations of Canada as a country. Whereas capital expenditures are just that. It's looking at how do we improve our operations. It's how do we improve our country. How do we build the infrastructure needed? But once we're done building that, it's done. It's ours. It's kind of like buying a house, in that you always have to buy food, exactly what you were saying. Every single week, you have to make sure you're budgeting for food, budgeting for food, budgeting for food. And if you're saying we're going to buy it from this specific store, you need to maintain that budget at that high level until at one point you say and make the decision, we're going to change that. Whereas from your house, you make the decision to buy your house, and yes, you pay it out and it's amortized over the time of your mortgage. But you're locked into that, it's there, and then at the end you have a house. So it's very similar to that, in that Mark Carney is balancing the operating budget, because that's what keeps us in control. That's what gets us in control of our future and in control of our budget. And then we can make the decisions with the capital spending of where we want to invest in next. And I know people always make fun of like the investing versus spending, but it really is in that you are in control of that money. You say, this is strategic for us to spend this money here, and you're making that active choice. Whereas when you have an operating budget that is not balanced, that's a real issue, because you're basically saying there's no long-term path. They're basically hoping that we're going to grow our tax base from this, which is certainly possible. But there's no sort of pathway to sort of get that under control, which is what the NDP is proposing. So there really are two different things. I personally really agree with where Carney's investing in that capital expenditure. And I really like that there's a pathway to balance the operating budget, because that's the part that we need to get under control. Like if you need to borrow money for a mortgage, that's totally fine. But if you need to borrow money for food, then you have to find a way to change that. Then you're trying to find a way to make it that way that balances out, so that the income coming in covers the income coming out.
Okay. So when Mr. Carney talks about this capital spending being catalyzing dollars, where you see this money going, does it have the potential to generate that $4 to $5 of private investment to match it in order to make it come true? Or like, is this a realistic expectation?
I absolutely do. And that comes from an understanding, and this is where a lot of my work comes in, where there's so many businesses in Canada who want to invest more in Canada. They want to put this money in Canada to grow, but they need governments on their side, whether that be through tax credits, whether that be through making sure the infrastructure is there, whether that be through however many means they need to partner with government and want the government in on their success too. The businesses are investing as well. And I think it's very readily available in things like critical minerals. It's very readily available which is what he's really focused on building out. It's very readily available in terms of reducing those interprovincial trade barriers. It's very readily available in terms of
Yes.
EVs, and especially looking at, I love that he had sort of battery recycling in there as well. And looking at the full range of the critical mineral cycle, because that was something that was even missing in the Trudeau administration. Is I really did feel like there was a big miss in terms of that recycling element, which the U.S. had in their Inflation Reduction Act. So yeah, that's all to say. I fully agree.
You mentioned something that's really important to us here. Something you mentioned just a second ago, really important to us here on the True North Eager Beaver. Battery recycling for electric vehicles. Mr. Beaver, would you please share with Josh why that means so much to us here on the program?
My partner, my beaver sweetie, happens to have a PhD in Queens in mechanical engineering, and he wanted to do a life cycle analysis of recycling of car batteries, and realized that the processes were terrible. So instead said, I need to make a new process. So he has found a way to recycle pretty much the totality of lithium, as well as cobalt, manganese, and nickel, but lithium separate salts from a car battery with zero liquid and solid waste at a purity that could probably just be transplanted into a new battery.
Oh wow, that's huge. That's
and
huge.
he's at the final stage of patent approval.
Which
in
then
the United
gives us
States.
domestic lithium and reduces our reliance on other countries, because I know there's a lot of reliance on China for lithium. All of our batteries are made of lithium. If we want to talk about making sure we have our resources for the right now and in the transition, yes, looking at long duration storage. There's a whole bunch of other ways you can do that, but right now our world runs on lithium batteries, and we don't have as strong of a domestic source of that. So let's build our own urban mining in terms of recycling what we've already imported.
Yes.
So I think it's great.
Rather than mining mines, mining the actually lithium that we already all have in our batteries.
Urban mining. Yeah. I think that's what it was called in the Inflation Reduction Act. I may be wrong on that. But they had a word for how that was actually mining. And I fully agree. I'd much rather have them here than sent off to somewhere else, which is where a lot of batteries end up going to die, to just like decompose.
We could there may even be an industry in accepting batteries from other nations. And don't worry, we'll dispose of them for you because we'd love to have that lithium. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So the nation building part, that $60 billion seems to be going to places, and it seems that it's true that they will catalyze those dollars. So Mr. Carney's not, pretending that this is some imaginary magic. There's actually some sound economic principle behind this.
Yeah, and I think that's because, and the reason why I would not call Carney's imaginary numbers, and I would call Poilievre's imaginary numbers, is because a lot of Poilievre's revenue being generated is from cutting taxes. So once you, that's just that to me is hoping that everything else sort of aligns to make it so that the people that you're cutting the taxes from create that benefit. You're sort of putting the power into somebody else's hand and saying, we're going to get rid of this revenue source that allows us to strategically put where we are, and we're going to deregulate it, and that's how it's going to go. Whereas Carney is focusing more on being in control of where we're going and control of where we're investing and how we're growing. And that's how you do investing smartly. That's how you invest in where you need to invest. Because the chances are, when you deregulate a lot of these businesses, they're not going to invest in lithium recycling, probably, because they're going to invest in the things that grow their own specific business, so that we have a growing of the industries that we already have, while leaving a lot on the table of where we need to go in the future. Because regardless of whether or not the US is investing also in batteries and long duration storage, the EU absolutely is. A lot of our other trading partners are. The United States is a huge partner, and they are huge in the global economy, but they are not the global economy. There is a number of other trading partners we can go to, and we should go to, and we don't want to put ourselves off on the back end with them, which is what happens when you're sort of only giving the opportunity to where we already are, not looking at where does that growth actually need to happen so that it grows, so that our economy grows as much as it can, not just as much as it will based off of what is already in there right now.
All right. So,
Well, one of the things that I think we should
no,
focus on
please
too, I'll just
go
make
ahead.
2 seconds there, is as we diversify our trade from the United States more to the European Union, which let's just look at the simple numbers. The United States is about 320 million, 330 million people, roughly. Europe is 740 million. There's just a lot more bank accounts and a lot more places. And let's remember how many people in Europe have a much higher quality of life and a much larger, dare I say, liquid assets in comparison to, sure, the United States is the richest country on earth, but it's owned by like 8 people.
Exactly. Who has the money? It's the richest country on earth, but if you look at at the average person, if you pick an average person out of a crowd, I don't know if you're going to want that life compared to where you are right now.
Exactly. Exactly, right. 320 million in the United States, 740 million in Europe. Where do you want to trade with? And let's remember, we share a land border with a European nation, Han
Oh,
Island.
where's that? Where's that?
Oh, that's the island that we disputed with
Oh,
Denmark for
yes.
decades,
Yes.
and they split it right down the middle between Greenland and the Nunavut, and as a result, European nation, which means we should probably join the EU. We can.
I think so. I think any sort of Canada EU agreement would be positive. I think even if it's not through the EU formally, having it would be an agreement with them in terms of how we would um, make our trade better, just like we have the Canada, US, Mexico agreement. And
Yeah.
who is the best person to negotiate that agreement is probably the one who handled other countries' exit from the EU and saw exactly how that affected their economy, exactly the things that you need to look out for and what needs to be in there.
And told them it was a bad idea.
Absolutely. So I 100% agree. And when you look at the EU regulations and all that sort of stuff, also thinking about where Polyev is, and he even acknowledges that we're going to utilize the Paris Accord. He mentions that and have clean growth, and he does have points on that in his platform to his credit. But it doesn't indicate any way that we're actually going to get there. And how are you going to gut the industry in terms of if you don't have the revenue for the incentives for the industry? If you're disincentivizing from a tax perspective all of the companies from innovating on their own accord, how are you going to make it that way we're actually an attractive trading partner to this country that has a much higher regulatory burden than us and a much higher regulatory standard? It's just going to create this sort of dichotomy where Canadian companies can't trade in the EU because naturally we're not up to their standards, which is nothing that you would ever want. And you see that a lot with sort of like medicines and stuff, where certain things are allowed in the and in food, where certain foods are allowed in the States because it's more and not here.
And not here.
I just saw an article the other day about Fruit Loops for that.
Oh, really?
The color of the dyes in the Fruit Loops. They were shown side by side, American Fruit Loops, Canadian Fruit Loops, and one looks like they were like painted by Disney, and the other ones are look like, oh, okay. And it's the dyes and the colors that are allowed here versus there. So
and the argument
our Fruit Loops are infinitely more exportable.
And remember, also remember, the reason it's spelled F-R-O-O-T, there's no actual fruit in it.
And Pierre would say that creates more innovation because, well, the Fruit Loop company is not going to come to Canada, that is the exact example of people will adapt to our regulations, that they fit our needs. And those that don't, because there certainly are companies, I know companies that don't operate in Canada because of our regulations. It's a lot
we don't
smaller.
want them.
It's a lot smaller.
You either adapt
and often they do want to adapt and they do want to go there. But if it's something where it's the nature of the product is fundamentally against where our regulations are, it would take, if it's a positive product for Canada, you can go through the process and you can get it approved. There are 100% methods that go. It does not take as long as people say. It certainly does take a long time, but it's not decades. It
Right.
would take a year to get this thing approved in Canada if it really was positive. If there was no reason for that, if there was no reason for that regulation, and in the end, it doesn't really negatively affect our economy that much. People will adapt, as we see with a lot of U.S. products that are still in Canada, but just formulated differently so that they are in line with our standards and what we want our nation to consume.
Right. So, Mr. Grizzly, I'm glad you mentioned the EU, because the other side of that is, as well, is that we also have a CPTPP agreement. So there's like 11 nations in that agreement, I believe, and we haven't really maximized that yet. And we recently signed a free trade deal with Indonesia, which is one of the world's most populous nations. So there's a lot of other trade. When you say we have other partners like this, and we're still good friends with Australia and New Zealand. Australia is going through an election right now too.
Yeah.
So and
Which
going through
also-
going through the same
Well,
things we are
what
there
is the-
too.
Yeah, and also to Poilievre's credit, that was also in the Conservative platform. In
Okay.
that they specifically mentioned Canada and New Zealand, and building out those relationships, which are great. And that's what I talk about, where they have these like one lines. That one I saw a lot of people talking about Twitter the weekend before they put it out. I would not be surprised if that was just put in there that weekend when they were 100% rewriting that platform over the long weekend. And they do have a lot of little bits on that. Which is great, but that sort of goes into where I'm like, oh, it's the level of a student council platform where you hear this good idea there, and then you figure out how and why and all these things after, because he just says, oh, we're going to do this, without explaining why, assuming that all these other people are going to explain why, because he saw that all on Twitter, which does not help the general Canadian population, because most people do not see that, and without showing how we'll get there, and why they're the best ones to do that.
All right.
Yeah.
So moving to the student council president, the man who never left the university debating club, as we keep on referring to him.
There's so much more truth to that
When you
than
see
most
the
people realize.
platform, I mean, come on. Now, over the past couple of weeks, we have been saying that it is couldn't wait to see the platform, because we were wondering what the costing would be, because there was a lot of flip-flops on sources of revenue that he seemed to be telegraphing he was going to get this money from, that all of a sudden he was not going to do anymore, because in the early part of the race he panicked a little bit as the Conservatives were sort of moving into the 200, 205 seat territory, according to the projections. And then we were wondering if there would be a platform at all. And then it seems that the Liberals said that they were going to do one. So it seems, and last week there was a lot of talk in the media, again, pressuring people about, like, why do we not have a platform? The debate moderator in French, particularly, tore a strip off of them during the debate for not having it. So Mark Carney says he's going to have one. So therefore, that kind of forces the Conservative hand. So but all they could tell us 2 days before it came out is that it was coming soon, which was what gave me the hint that, oh, they are cobbling this together at the last minute because they did not have one, which I found very interesting from the man who talked about other people needing a stronger work ethic. But I will let that one slide.
And you see the date. You see the date right in the file name too. They kept the 04/18/25 right in the file date, which I thought was very funny.
Oh God! And then yesterday on the show, I also wondered if there would be lots of pictures, and it seems that, as you mentioned, there are 17 pictures of Pierre in the platform. I think it's got 30-something pages. 4 pages are full pictures of him. Anida's in a lot of them. And I believe in Mark Carney's platform, it's 60 pages and there's 1 picture. Okay.
And I think that people are really underselling the strangeness of this politicization of the family structure that Conservatives are doing now. That's something that I have not seen. Obviously, I have not seen the most amount of Canadian elections, but never have I seen somebody. And I understand it's because Poilievre's not popular, and they think that having his wife and having his kids and random kids at rallies sort of up on stage with him is going to humanize him, which I understand to a degree. But you're not a person. You're not a reality TV show personality. You're you're a prime minister. You're a prime minister in Canada. The first partner or the first lady or first whoever does not have the official role or conventional role that there is in the United States. I think it would be great if they were a part of it. That'd be excellent if it was a formalized a role that Canadians knew about. But you're not a celebrity. You are running to be the prime minister. So I don't understand why there is this magazine spread as if it's something that people can pick up from the newsstand. That is primarily about the photos.
Part of me wants to say pretty and smart platform edition, but
Yeah.
that would be bitchy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. I cannot.
All
But you
style,
didn't say
no
it. But you didn't say
substance.
it.
I cannot help myself. Yes, I didn't say it. I said I would want to say it, but I did
Yes,
not say it.
absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely.
that is true. Redeeming qualities. Okay. Oh God, I'm terrible. Okay, so we have this platform that comes out. Okay, general question, and then we'll ask the other one is the Conservatives of all the parties have a self-professed reputation for being the party you go to. If it's all things money and economics, right? The NDP platforms is always going to bankrupt us, curve your spine. The Liberal platform is always going to spend us into uncontrollable deficits. It's just going to ruin your grandchildren's future. We're the only ones, right? Even though they've not left us with a structural surplus, left government leaving us in a structural surplus for over 100 years, right? They're the party of the economy. That's the myth,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Myth.
But it's an enduring one because people still vote on that. It's the go-to trope whenever an election starts, and it seems to endure.
It's the
Does
party
this
of economic responsibility.
right? Does this live up to that, or is this a bit torching that brand?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is not a conservative platform. I would have loved. I really would have loved a strong. I really like strong policy. I really like a good platform above any partisan affiliation. I clearly am biased towards the Liberals in this election. But previously, I have voted for a number of different parties in my life. I really prioritize who I think is best for the jurisdiction, whether it be a provincial or federal election.
Okay.
And I really value strong parties that are strong in their convictions and what they're selling to the people of Canada. Because even if my priorities don't match somebody else's, I want them to have a strong option for what their priorities are.
Right.
And this is not a conservative platform. They want to say that Doug Ford is not a real conservative. To me, Pierre Poilievre is not a real conservative because this is not responsible fiscal leadership. This does not grow the economy. It is not accurate numbers. By no means are those revenue projections conservative. by absolutely no means are they conservative. And yes, it is a conservative. It is a conservative value, I guess, to have less government, more small government, and they certainly do have that deregulate approach and deformalize approach. That's the sort of anchor of all of their growth is that deregulate, and then the growth is going to come in the future, and then the budget will balance itself, which is effectively what they're saying.
Yeah.
This is just not. This is really not that. This is really not that. This is not conservative by any means. This is an idealistic platform. It's idealistic in saying that we're just going to create these shovel-ready zones. We're going to figure it out once we get there. Ideally, in this world, we're going to get rid of this, and then everybody else is going to grow. They over-villainize a lot of different legislation. Bill 69 is by no means the Anti-Pipeline Act. It was made to respect provincial jurisdiction. And what Carney is saying is, yes, we will respect provincial jurisdiction, and that when we agree with your assessment, in that if we have shared priorities, we both want the best for Canadians. We understand that you have specific regional priorities. that may not fit our specific assessment needs. So we'll go with your review. So they're respecting provincial autonomy. The solution to that is not to disrespect provincial autonomy and bulldoze the provinces and say, well, you're going to do this anyways because we're telling you to. That just creates further problems like what we have in Alberta, where we have provinces feeling alienated. But that's sort of what it hopes for. And then when you look at this accounting, that is absolutely not what will happen. That is not conservative by any means. It doesn't focus on capital. It doesn't focus on growth. It just focuses on getting them over the finish line, and they try to avoid negative headlines for it, which really, really hurt them. And in the end, it's just very disappointing. Regardless of whether or not you're conservative, this is a disappointing platform. And I think they had a real missed opportunity to say, we are the party who has been prepared for the past number of years. Our leader and our party under this direction is more established than Mark Carney's Liberals because he's brand new to the role. Let's start out this election fresh with a really strong policy that details what we're going to do. We say we want change. This is the change that's going to come, and shape the election. But instead, they allowed Trump to shape the election, Carney to shape the election. And then they brought in this platform that was clearly written over the weekend. I'm sure they had a platform before. They had a plan that they never planned on releasing, but they absolutely rewrote it over the weekend because there is a number of inconsistencies with how they presented themselves at the beginning of the campaign. And it really bit them in the butt because when you rush through and you speed through your work, especially when you don't have all of that knowledge and all of that understanding in there, you get sloppy results. And that's what I see. I see a sloppy platform with sloppy numbers. That is not what they can do. And that is not what the Conservative brand should be and what the Conservative Party should do. They could really do a lot better. And I think you're seeing that with all the Conservative infighting right now. Because Conservatives themselves are saying, this is not the party that I want it to be. I know we could do so much better for Canada. There is a world in which Conservative Party would have been absolutely the best party to lead Canada through this, especially if you go back to their leadership election. Jean Charest was a very strong leader, in my opinion, and had really great ideas for Canada, in my opinion. And it just got so off the rails. And then they threw in random cultural war points at such a high level to try to goat the Liberals into changing the direction of this of the election, to try to goat the Liberals into pivoting away from the economy and pivoting away from Trump, which in my view was really disingenuous and really harmful to people. I understand that they're trying to work really hard against the Trump 2.0 allegations, but when you look at some of the more specific ones in there, and I'm talking specifically about the trans women in women's prisons, and what all of that means down the road in terms of importing a lot of that war against trans people in the US into Canada, where we really don't see that issue, especially not to the degree that we do see in the US. Trying to import that here for the benefit of their own political fortunes is just so disingenuous to me and so harmful that's really when I got that's the part that really upset me. I can understand if they want to do the political spin for the policy part, if they want to change up what they're doing. I honestly didn't believe that they were going to do that much from when they were talking before, because if you look at how much the Conservative identity has changed over the past 3 years, like, what can you really expect? I don't respect anybody selling out Canadians and selling out people for their own political fortunes. That to me is that I really don't appreciate. So that was also part of the Conservative platform that I really do want to address. I understand why it's not in the main narrative, because it would muddy up an election that's very focused on Trump and the economy. But I was very disappointed with this platform. I think a lot of Conservatives were disappointed with the platform. The party could have done a lot better, and Conservative governments around Canada provincially have done a lot better. And I really do think that that's not. I think it's fundamentally not a Conservative platform.
All right. So go ahead, Mr. Weasley.
I have something I want to share with both you gentlemen really quickly here. I'm going to put this on the screen and read it for those listening in the audio version. This is from Martina Stevis Gridniff. Martina is Canada Bureau Chief at the New York Times. And she says, according to the IMF in its updated World Economic Outlook, its flagship forecast predicts Canada will not go into a recession, but warns of downside risks, i.e. this could change for the worse. Canada GDP growth, 2024, 1.5, 2025, 1.4, 2026, 1.6. So basically, if we stay the course from that, if we stay the course, if we re-elect the Liberal Party, we're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought Justin Trudeau destroyed the economy.
It's and I think that's exactly why you see a lot of the because I was hearing some folks say that even post-COVID, you had a lot of people who during COVID are able to work at home and get money and sort of came out, and now you're in a good place and you want things to continue. And then you have people who right now are still struggling to get back up on their feet. So they're saying, oh, I want somebody who's going to help me get up on my feet faster. And hoping that the Conservative Party is that. But I think the challenge is that the Conservative Party is not that. And if you stay the course with the Liberals, and I don't even think this is staying the course with the Liberals, because
This is
I think a big reason why we've been able to survive this with very few analysis have suggested that we're actually going to go into a full recession at this point because of the way our economy has been handled up to this point. So if we continue with this smart leadership, we will be able to. Yes, progress might not be as quick as folks in Gen Z, and I say this as the absolute oldest somebody in Gen Z can be, as Gen Z might want, but it's still going to happen. Whereas with the Polyev platform, it fundamentally will not. I think that will put us into recession just because of how poorly it's planned. In that, when are these things going to happen? There's these tax breaks that are fundamentally being misrepresented. His 15% tax break to the income tax is 2 point something percentage points. I think 2.75 percentage points. And it's just all of this noise that does not help us. And they're hoping that by deregulating, they're sort of putting hope towards the future, that a change will sort of expedite things, when in reality it sort of gets rid of everything that has been working up to this point to prevent us from falling into recession and prevent us from indicating that a recession will come in the future, and hoping that it will benefit us, when in reality we know from past experience of policies like these, it won't.
Okay. Wow. All right. So, wow, it achieves the opposite of what is promised, it would seem. Okay. Well, let's look at some various claims here with regard to it, because something that I've heard is that that 15% tax cut that you were talking about, that we said on the show, wasn't actually 15% tax cut, because, and we were wondering, because we're saying, if you have to break out your calculator to figure out how a tax cut works, maybe there's something about the tax cut that you need to know. Whereas Mark Carney said it's going to be 1% tax cut off 15 down to 14. That's what it is. It's understandable. It's the first year. There's no 3-year commitment down the road because we don't know what the situation will be. And Polyev promised 2.25%, but that would hit in the third year. This was really 1.125% for the first 2 years, but he was selling it as 15.
Yeah.
Now I heard something saying that all of that is now not going to happen as early promised, that all that has been changed and it's backloaded. It doesn't hit till year 4 now.
Well, even then, it's supposed to hit later. I think it is. It's not going to hit till year 4. But even when they look at the projections for it's just so different from what they initially projected. So which is it? Is it the one in the platform, or is it the one in the news post?
Because first year, Mark Carney's was supposed to be 1, and theirs was supposed to be 1.125 if you did it all.
And it was always
what
going to
I've
be
been hearing
graded
is that
up
the
there.
first year is not. It's less now.
It is. So the I'm looking at the platform now. Originally, it was going to cost, I think, $3 billion in the first year, and now all of a sudden it's costing $1 billion. And it's going up to $14 billion, which is what the total cost would be.
Right.
But that isn't until the fourth year, and even in the first year, or in the third year, it's there's $3 billion less than that. So who's not going to get this $3 billion worth of tax cuts that expected it previously? And it's those sort of things that aren't defined in the platform, that aren't laid out in the platform. So the platform just says we're going to get this tax cut, and then when you look at the and they say that it's going to be phased in, and we got details of what that phase in would look like when they announced it. But now it looks like those details have changed, and now all we see is that, oh well, now there's $2 billion less here, $3 billion less in this year. But what does that phase in actually look like? And where do they project that phase in going? And I think people are also really overestimating the amount of Canadians that will see this discount. The lowest income tax, like our tax rates go up. This is only for the lowest income bracket. I think that people are overestimating the amount of benefit that this will see Canadians versus what that $13 billion could have done for them through other measures. And that, yes, you save $1,000 up front, but $1,000 up front 4 years from now, let's say that,
a future value of money,
and people always do discount the future, but you're losing $10,000 worth of benefits or tax credits, or however, in the meantime. So you're not going to be better off. I think a lot of the analysis yesterday also showed that, and that looking in sum, the average Canadian will be worse off by this platform, just in terms of money in your pocket. So it doesn't achieve what they want.
Big surprise.
Yeah. But
not a big surprise at all.
They got the headline. Well, they didn't get the headline that they wanted, but the platform was framed the way that they wanted, and that we're cutting the tax by 15%. Forget about how we're going to do that, when we're going to do that. We're cutting it eventually. And we have less deficit than the Liberals. We're gonna get rid of the deficit in total. When in reality, when you look at the numbers, people are saying that it's around 110 billion, I think, in new promises, compared to the Conservative or the Liberals 130 billion. It's not that huge of a difference compared to what we're getting. And a lot of their revenue targets are just fully I'm not going to say made up. They're clearly based in some sort of fact. It is a very rosy and optimistic fact, and an absolutely no way conservative estimate of what those revenue projections would be.
And that's the thing I wanted to, because the first piece of news I listened to was somebody from CBC saying, well, the Conservatives did something unusual. And when we're talking about a costed platform and somebody says unusual, that makes my ears prick up. The second thing I saw is when I looked up, conservative platform release, and some things had like $90 billion and others had 110. And I'm thinking, if the media is not clear on the amount, that's not good, right? So it seems that number is the number that everybody should agree upon. That was, and it wasn't there. So I'm looking at this, and then I'm hearing about that they are. Mr. Carney made a point when introducing his platform, saying that counter tariff revenue, I'm only counting it for the first year. I'm not assuming that it's continuing revenue year after year, because then if you do that, you start planning on that, and that's terrible. You should not be doing that. And number two, saying that he was not, even though he was doing all this activity that's going to catalyze all these dollars, he's not predetermining how much money that will bring in. So therefore, the deficit that he's running, this could potentially be less if there are those catalyzing dollars. So it's almost like a 60 billion maximum, unless like we get thrown some curveballs and stuff like that. But at that moment, which could be less, which is inherently conservative accounting. Whereas Pierre Poilievre is actually saying that these policies will generate revenue, and we are estimating it will be this much, based on what, I don't know. and inserting those numbers in and saying, we will get this money.
Mm-hmm. And they're
As it's a sure thing.
Yeah, they're saying we're going to make revenue from eliminating clean fuel regulations is up to $3 billion per year at one point. Which, how are you eliminating these regulations that just incentivize companies to give like output-based pricing? They pay money into government. So you're foregoing revenue here, but how does that create new revenue? People are just going to invest in what they have now. It does not mean that they're going to get more, because in reality, they weren't hindering their production because of these clean fuel regulations. Yes, there are some companies that weren't coming to Canada because of those regulations. I do think that they needed to be adjusted and do need to be adjusted. But from my understanding and from a lot of the companies that I've worked with, the ones that have issues with the clean fuel regulations in terms of being able to enter Canada are clean fuel companies. They're companies who are coming to Canada because they are part of the green transformation. They just want to make sure that their innovations are captured as beneficial within the current clean fuels ecosystem. So like looking at sustainable airline fuel, looking at different hydrogen fuels, looking at fuels from different ways to utilize waste into energy that isn't incineration, but instead using other forms of transformation that are more carbon negative. But because of the way that their process goes through, may face unintended consequences from the current clean fuel regulations. So they definitely have room to change, but eliminating them, I think, is very rosy to assume that all of this repeal and all of this elimination and all of this scrapping and axing and XYZ, how getting rid of all these things is going to give you more, as opposed to just keeping things the same and giving you less. So that is, I think, the main thing that we see in the Conservative Party that isn't in the Liberal Party. They're not
isn't it
discounting the future quite as much in terms of where they see the money coming from.
Okay.
It's cutting off their nose to spite their face. I mean, really, isn't it? In the long run, I mean, we're going to save you a couple of bucks today. Oh yeah, but we won't have a planet.
And
in
also,
30
what
years.
is Canada? Like, who does Canada want to be? What is our national identity as a country? Yeah. Are we a leader? Are we the positive face of economic growth and where we want our economies to go? Are we a nation that other countries can learn from, where we can export ideas and export talent and innovations to other countries so that they can learn from us? Or do we want to be a country that's always trying to get back up on our feet? And clearly, Pierre Poilievre thinks that Canadians are stupid. So if you speak it into existence, maybe that's what will happen. But do we want to build the Canada that I know, which is a global leader, and this is the way you do it? Or do we want to become what the United States already thinks of us as, which is a little brother, a little growth coming off the side, off the top of their
satellite
head. It's really a fundamental question of what our Canadian economy is and what our Canada is.
Okay, so one of Pierre's go-to lines just during this entire campaign is that under the alleged Liberal decade of darkness, the Trudeau government, yes, the Trudeau government has made us more reliant on the United States, and he's the one that's going to fix that. Does this plan do this?
It does not. I don't think it. I don't think it at all makes us less reliant on the United States. It certainly aligns some of our regulations with the United States in that we might see if a company has a certain way of operating in the United States, it might be easier for them to then operate in Canada. But when you look at what Trump is doing, they're saying, oh, we want all your manufacturing to be done here. We want you to be doing things here. We're going to put huge tariffs on what you put out there. We want American-made companies. This is not going to that aligning with that and aligning with American-made companies does not build Canadian companies. Does not build Canada. Replicating a deregulated system that's in the U.S. does not build Canada, because in the end, the U.S. is always going to be more attractive because it has much more people. So I really don't think that it is decoupling Canada from the U.S. by any stretch of the imagination. How we decouple Canada from the U.S. is by building out our external trading partners, and how we do that is by making sure that our standards are up to their standards. Because if we have lower standards than them, if they see our products of less than, if they see our country as less than, if they don't see us as a reliable trading partner, then they aren't going to want to work with us. If our emissions are huge, if our fuel doesn't meet their clean fuel standards, if our companies are huge carbon emitters, they aren't going to want to partner with us, and we aren't going to decouple from the U.S. We're only going to be able to work with the U.S., whose regulations align with our own.
Right. So it doesn't help us diversify our trade partners. It doesn't make us less reliant on the United States. The tax cut is not coming as fast as promised. It doesn't help us, and it's not based. Let me ask you this, because when they say it's unusual to do the accounting where you presuppose what the revenues are, like, why is this not recommended accounting?
And it's not necessarily not recommended to presuppose where the revenues might be, in terms of, like, if you're saying you're investing in a builder, or if you're investing in certain things, you predict, like a big part of Carney's capital investment is built off the presumption that when you do this front-loaded cost that will build the economy, then we will eventually in future budgets see our tax base grow, all of that sort of stuff. But it doesn't presuppose what that growth in tax base will be past reasonable expectations. It doesn't overestimate the individual value of this one specific thing. And it's more focused on, what are we doing actively to build this based off of our evidence? How does doing this build our economy, as opposed to we believe that this is something that's hurting our economy, so we're going to get rid of it, and then hope that things fall into place so that they grow. It tends to be evidence-based. It tends to be modeled. It tends to be much more conservative evidence. And it is not the entire backbone of your economic plan. Without those revenue projections, the plan that is in front of us, in my opinion, I will say, falls apart. And I think that they know that. I don't think that this is the plan that they will go to if they govern. I think that they will obviously have to govern because there are smart people. They're smart advisors. There's no use pretending otherwise, that there's not something informing what they're saying. But this plan that's on the table is just not possible to me. Whereas, because when you look at the Liberal platform, yes, they do have those statements of, this is going to invest in our economy and build our economy. We're going to grow our tax base, grow our revenue base. It is not reliant on that. Our balancing of the operating budget is not reliant on that. Our balancing of the operating budget is relying on things like attrition, is relying on things like efficiencies. And attrition is something that you can tangibly measure. You could look at how many people do we see retiring out of the public service, and how could we reorganize that structure so that we can do more with less, which is 100% possible, because the public service reorganizes all the time. We see new ministries, we see new divisions, new bureaus. It's not, I saw some people on the NDP side saying, well, that's cutting jobs, it's cutting jobs, it's cutting jobs. For the public service specifically, I don't necessarily see it like that. Yes, if you're cutting jobs from like somebody who is more of a front-facing staff at a ministry that deals directly with Canadians, yes, that is the case. But when I think of attrition, I think more of the policy staff, the bureaucracy, if you will, which is always being reinvented and always filling these new, sometimes not 100% beneficial directorates and things like that. it's reorganizing and finding attrition in a way that is measurable and that we can predict, as opposed to saying we're going to find efficiencies from consultants that haven't been hired yet. We're going to find efficiencies by cutting program spending that we haven't said what it's going to be yet. By cutting, and then we're going to bring in revenue from growing productivity in areas that we don't know and that we're hoping other people will do.
Okay, so about that one, the consultants, that's the last one of the ones the Conservatives made, saying that he's going to save $10 billion a year from cutting consultants. From what I can tell, that's like about half the budget. While I assume every budget has a little bit of waste and maybe a little bit of duplication, that consulting work that would be cut would still need to be done, and we'd still have to pay people to do it somewhere, somehow, right?
Yeah, you would have to pay. So just to be clear, this is not the type of consulting work that I do. I do not work, the government does not hire me as a consultant. Just businesses hire me as a consultant, and then I work with the businesses, and then they will talk to government based off of, like, as if I am employed by the company itself. So just to be clear, that is a different type of consulting. And I do agree that I think that type of consulting, I worked in the Ontario Public Service for a bit, and I do think that type of consulting is overused. I do think there's efficiencies to be found in the way that the government uses consulting. We have huge consulting budgets, especially during the pandemic. The reason why they do that is because the expertise does not exist internally. So I think that's a huge opportunity for efficiency. Absolutely. Oftentimes, that's where budget overruns come from, is from consultants. So it's less balancing the budget. It's more getting rid of what we saw in the past few years, a lot of these over budget departments. I think most of the reason why they use these is so that they can validate what they're doing, so that they have expert validation. Because governments, when they do things, tend to be critiqued. So it's valuable to have an external source come in and audit those. So, like, for example, when you look at the Conservative budget, they had two people coming in and saying that they were that they audited this as a third party. That's a consultant. They got two people to consult on this platform to go through and do the work that they did and duplicate the work that they did in order to validate it. So I think that, yes, absolutely. Should we be trying to do more work in-house where it's possible? 100%. Where it makes sense, where we are going to need this skill set for an ongoing basis. And that if you're doing it in-house, but you need this very specific skill set, so you're hiring somebody at X amount of dollars for a salaried position. So you're saving money in the short run, but then you're committed to that person for the rest of their career, where then their productivity may be less. I don't think that that's beneficial, but I do think that there's room to cut down that. I don't think it's anywhere near that level. I don't think Carney's anticipating using consultants at that level, because when you look at the past, so much of the consulting was due to COVID and was due to overrun. So I do think that's a valuable point. I do think it's actually really important that Polyev brings that up, and I think that that's when it comes from, the benefit of having a good opposition, and that you're able to talk about that with a little bit of intricacies and bring that to the Canadian people. The issue is when you oversell it and when you sensationalize it and when you try to make it this political talking point, where then it gets a little bit out of the realm of reality. So there's a little bit of positive and negative, because there is a lot of especially in the States, you had seen a lot of issues with consultants in the government in the past, especially if you look at the opioid crisis. That sort of stuff isn't happening here. Let's not pretend that that's happening here. But certainly an area to find efficiencies, not something to balance your whole budget on, not something that's going to be a huge revenue generator for you, because that work is oftentimes not it just isn't. From my understanding, that's just not really how it works, and it's not going to actualize the way that they predict it will in their fiscal track, especially not to the level that they predict.
Okay, so try to be fair or kind. So to the Conservatives, is there anything? Same question as for the Greens. Is there anything in there that Carney should steal?
I think that it is one. I think the Liberal Party has played into Western alienation for especially with Trudeau. I think that to say that Alberta and Saskatchewan are fundamentally anti-Canadian because of where they are is false. I think that they're people who are in a lot of ways harmed, who are a lot of ways less, who benefit less from what the government had been doing compared to others, who see themselves actively hindered more by the government compared to other provinces.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, especially as somebody from Ontario, especially from somebody who lives in Toronto, it is incredibly important to acknowledge the fundamental different needs that the Western province have, and the fundamental different like lived experience that Western provinces have. They all like to talk about how we don't want woke ideology and they don't want EDI, but I'm going to use EDI to the benefit of the Western provinces, because even though they're less in terms of population, that doesn't mean that their needs should not be met. And I think that that is something that is very valuable in the Conservative platform, in that at least there is a voice for what they have been hearing. My perspective on a lot of what we see in terms of the intense Western alienation, folks who are very, very upset, is that the feelings are absolutely valid. The experiences that inform those feelings are absolutely valid, and those perspectives are absolutely valid. There is a different approach into how we could address those challenges than what is being suggested. You don't have to go for what the easiest one-line suggestion is, because that might not be the best one. I think when you look at Carney, he really looks at connecting provinces. He really looks at increasing projects. He really looks at being balanced about the types of projects that we do in a way that I think the previous government was not. They say it's the same team as Trudeau. It was a very, very different team. I think we had a change in where the environment minister was, and that was a big reason why people in the West felt issues with Ottawa. So I think that the sentiment in terms of Western provinces are there, and I think that there are folks that are not represented and were not represented by the Trudeau Liberals, whose feelings are absolutely valid and informed by absolutely true experiences to them, that deserve to have a solution for their problem. I don't agree with the suggested solution in terms of, I don't think it's just go back to what you're doing, get rid of transfer payments, do all of this sort of stuff. I certainly don't agree that that's the way. But I think what the Trudeau Liberals could have done, and I think the Carney Liberals will do and have done to a reasonable degree in this election, is acknowledging that and saying we're going to learn from that and figure out a way to make it so that this works for you as well. Even though you're less seats, even though we can win the election without you, that doesn't mean that we're going to abandon you, because ultimately it is to the benefit of all Canadians to have a united Canada. Because in the end, we do benefit from having Alberta there. They do. They are a huge economic driver. They are huge, even just culturally. Having the prairies is a huge part of Canada's history and our whole understanding. So many Indigenous populations are in those areas too. I think we really underestimate, especially here, the amount of Indigenous supporters and First Nation supporters that the Conservatives have. And a lot of that comes from recognizing the challenges that they face in real life, in terms of a lot of times these gun laws negatively affect First Nations populations, because there's different reserves that you can't go on without a gun, because of just the level of just because that's the laws of the land of what those nations have created, and the situation that's there. There's a huge hunting part of culture culturally. I spent a few weeks down in Manitoba with a lot of Indigenous veterans, and saw and like learned about a lot of that sort of stuff. And they showed me the guns and sort of what they had done, compared to Toronto, where the ways that we're impacted by gun laws are so fundamentally different.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that it understands that in the conservative platform, even more than the liberal platform. I assume in practice it will be done a little bit better, and that Carney understands the issues that were done with the previous programs. A big issue with the previous gun buyback program is that now people didn't want to go to shooting ranges because they were scared that their guns were going to be taken away.
Mm.
Mhm.
And then these were guns that were passed down from a thing. They have these gun collections. They're hunting rifles. They're culturally significant to them.
Right.
And in the end, they aren't posing a real threat. They aren't posing a threat to anybody else because they're locked up appropriately, because these are people
Right.
who have culturally understood gun safety throughout their entire life, compared to the reality of what it's like in
Yes.
Toronto.
They don't see it as a weapon, as a tool.
Yeah, they see it
It's
as
a tool to use, or in a rural setting. It's a tool. That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
not meant to protect yourself from an invader. It's meant as a
Yeah.
tool to scare away wolves or bears, and they're not even, in many cases, they're not even trying to shoot to kill those animals. They just want to scare them
And
off.
I think that's a huge point.
Now, if you
is
have
that
an
they're not
nuisance animal on your farm, you're probably going to
Yeah.
shoot it.
And that's the difference between here and the US, is that when we talk about our law-abiding gun owners, and I really don't like that statement because I do think it draws to the US. When you think of law-abiding
Mhm.
gun owners in the US, you think of people who own guns for protection, not people
Yes.
who own guns because they're part of their life and their culture. Regardless of whether,
Yes.
no matter who you are, even there's an Alberta culture, a Western culture, a Manitoba culture. And then obviously all these cultures within that. So they're very different. And I have issue with the liberals importing the US gun crisis here and presenting it as if it is the same, as if these are people who have them for protection reasons when they don't. Even though illegal guns don't come into Canada to protect, they come into Canada as weapons, and they come into Canada illegally. So they fit within our current legal guidelines. I am absolutely certain that there's ways that these can be tightened up, that there's purpose of the gun buyback, that there are ways that we can and should address the ways in which they negatively impact us in urban centers, specifically in Ontario and Toronto. But I think that the conservative platform acknowledges the lived realities of people out there. Do they address it in the best way? Absolutely not. I think that they do it in with the least policy acuity and least sort of delicate way, I guess you could say, or least less focused on cost benefit, and more just focused on cost benefit to them as a party, and less so cost benefit to the people as a whole. But I do think that there's ways that people can learn from the conservatives, and the liberals specifically can take from the conservatives in terms of the sentiments that inform the sentiments that inform those statements. And I think it's fair. I see some people in the chat who are saying like it's better to be proactive than having people die, and I absolutely agree. But the way you do that and be proactive is understanding where the source of this comes back, and where the source of those challenges come from, and then how to address and target those solutions accordingly without negatively affecting or unnecessarily negatively affecting other folks of the country, so that when you tell them this is the best option, you mean it. When you tell them, I understand what you're saying, I empathize with what you're saying, I see the challenges that you're bringing forward, and here is how our plan understands those and takes those into consideration. I think that that is something that's important, that I want the liberals to, and I want every single party to do, regardless of what that ends up at the end result. I don't want to presume that folks from the West are just inherently bad, inherently Trumpers, inherently XYZ. They're not. They're not. Twitter is very does not represent everybody. And honestly, most people on Twitter are much ruder than they would be in real life, see things in much more black and white than they would in real life, are much less open to change in real life. You can always tell. But villainizing them, just like I don't want them to villainize me as someone from Toronto, as somebody who inherently doesn't care about them. But the way that you have them, the way that you work against that assumption that people from the Eastern Canada or from Ontario and Quebec don't care about the West is by being someone from that province and being someone in those positions of power and caring about their problems too. And obviously Mark Carney is from the West. He now lives in Ottawa. But so that does help as well. But I do think that is I do think that's something that we can take from the platform. And I think that could have been something that could have been really strong. As I said before, they had so much time as a Conservative Party to create a strong policy platform that could have talked about the intricacies of these things and appealed across the country and set the tone for the election. Because 100%, if they had come out with a huge, intricate policy that really positioned them well as the smartest choice, the Liberals would have definitely been caught off guard, and probably would have changed their strategy altogether. If they had done that, I think it would have worked out well for them. But the issue is that the team at the helm is not the team to do that. The current Conservative Party is not the Conservative Party that I would like Canada to have as a strong opposition.
We feel the same way. We want a progressive Conservative Party, not a Reform Party with a Conservative name. Look, these are let me show you something quickly here. I'm going to have to go shortly. I need to show you something quickly to give you an idea of the difference between party leaders. So first, let me show you the aircraft that Mark Carney is flying on very quickly here. So let me just blow this up really. There's the aircraft Mark Carney is flying on, right? And here is the aircraft Pierre Poilievre is flying on. Do you see a difference there? Because I sure as heck do. There's Pierre Poilievre's aircraft. It's got his name in giant letters, and on the tail, it's got the Conservative logo. And there's the aircraft that Mark Carney is flying on. One is vainglorious, and the other is about party and country. One wants to rule over us. The other one wants to govern the nation and make us a better place for every single Canadian. And one other thing I need to add that you alluded to a moment ago, how Twitter is not real life, number one. And number two, people say things on Twitter that they wouldn't say in real life. And I'm going to defer to Mike Tyson when he says, too many people have been on social media online so long and saying terrible things about people and never facing consequences. You need to get punched in the face a few times to realize you can't say things like that to people in real life. That was a paraphrase. He said it a little bit more bluntly, but you get the gist of it, right? So I do have to run
punching people in the face
in a minute. So yeah. So I do have to run in a minute because I am running way behind this morning, which is fine because I was enjoying your expertise and your commentary, sir. We really do.
Brevity is not my strong
suit.
I'm not very good at keeping things brief, and I will acknowledge.
No, that's fine. That's completely fine. We're okay with that. Believe me, we love to go into depth and detail. And when we have somebody such as yourself, who is an expert in their field and can bestow some of their expertise upon us, let's go crazy. Let's go as long as we can. That being said, I do have to run. So, Mr. Beaver, are you able to end there? You can? Okay. All right. Josh, thank you for coming. I really do appreciate it. Mr. Beaver, I will talk to you later. I got to go. Kits and Cubs, thanks for coming out. We really do love and appreciate every single one of you. My words of wisdom for today are make sure if you haven't voted already, make sure you get out and vote on the 28th. Bring a friend, bring family, bring people. Make sure people get out and vote. We're not telling you who to vote for. We'll never do that. We strongly recommend you do not vote Conservative, but we're not telling you not to. We're not telling you not to, but we're strongly recommending that you don't, because it will not benefit your neighbor, your community, your friends, your family, and those people you love and care about. Not telling you who to vote for, but we do encourage you to vote. I got to go.
Bye, my friend. All right, Josh. So we've gone through the platforms. We've looked at some stuff. Generally now, it would seem to me that at this moment, given that the conservative platform is somewhat underwhelming and does not live up to the party brand as being the party you go to for economics, we have X number of days left in the campaign. If I were Mr. Carney, I would be doing nothing but tearing this to shreds and talking about what's next, how we expand the economy, how we diversify, because Trump, 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 Trump. The other day, we were on the show, and I thought I was watching and said, "Oh, the markets went down a lot, so somebody must open their mouth." And he was talking about firing. IQ 47 south of us was talking about firing Jerome Powell again, who's the head of the central bank. Mr. Koryev has been talking about firing the head of the central bank. He was asked about that recently, didn't seem to have a full-throated endorsement anymore about firing the director of the central bank. Earlier in your comments, you were talking about the landing that we had after COVID, and well, the central bank does control monetary policy. So, should we fire our central bank governor?
No, especially not through some sort of political scheme to blame somebody for COVID. I never support the public service being used as pawns for political fortunes. I think that there's a huge value in a nonpartisan public service, in a public service that and a bureaucracy that's not beholden to the political sphere, because that's how you operate, and that's how you give fearless advice and loyal implementation. In that, I don't want somebody that's just going to be a yes man to the prime minister. I want somebody who's going to present all the options. And even if I were the one in charge, I wouldn't want someone that's just going to present all the things I want to hear too. I want to see why I'm wrong. I want to see why my understanding is flawed. I want to see the information that I'm missing. And I think getting rid of somebody just because you think that that won't happen, or just because you think that by putting a head on the stake, it's going to show we are going to make real change and we're going to get somebody good in the role. That does not make it true. It is the exact same thing as when you're saying, well, we're going to get rid of the taxes and that'll fix everything. I'm going to get rid of the bank governor and that's going to fix everything. That's just not the case. And I think he knows that, but he thought it was going to be politically advantageous for him to sell that because you need to present something. And he clearly always does present something, even though it changes every 2 minutes now. But I don't think that actually would present positive change. I don't think that's how you make smart decisions. And I don't think that we can blame the Bank of Canada for what's happened. I think when you look at the G7, we've performed exceptionally well. I think we have had very smart moves by the Bank of Canada. And I don't think it's fair to rewrite the past and demonize the central bank for your own, for just because that's what Trump does. And we saw the markets don't respond well to that. And we saw that that's why Trump walked it back. And I think because now people see that the markets don't respond well to that, and that that's not actually how you fix things. That's not actually how you make things better. The public is sort of seeing through the veil of Polyev, because the public as a whole is much more mobilized this election, is much more well-informed this election compared to past ones, perhaps. You're seeing through that, and that's exactly why Polyev is starting to change. And that's exactly why the Conservative Party is starting to change, in that at the beginning of the election, they were putting his name really up on everything, like that plane. And then now you look at their new ads, they don't mention him once. They don't talk about him at all, because Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives is not the Conservative Party. They're relying on the brand of the Conservative Party of Canada, on the history of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Right.
And in doing so, they're acknowledging that the team that they have at the helm right now is not really up to the conservative values that people are looking for. So in sum, I don't think that's a smart decision.
Okay. You answered my next question, because I was just going to ask, was releasing that platform a smart tactical decision?
Releasing this one was not. I really would have released one at the beginning. That was a strong policy platform. That said, I'm not the one to go to in terms of the political strategy of what would have been the best. But I think if they wanted me to in some world vote for them, that is how you would have gotten my vote. Is that if you put a strong platform? I don't think Pierre Poilievre was a leader to do that. I think that they made the decision that they weren't going to do that when they elected him as leader. So I would have said the smart thing would have been to get a new leader and then write a platform and then release it at the beginning. But in general, this was
Mike Harris.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Come out with it early. Yeah, because I mean, even if they made us wait right to the election, had they had it ready and to go like on the first day of the election, we had a chance. Because I mean, their strategy was to do a policy a day announcement. Clearly, if it was all out in the platform, they could have just like worked from it, and then right.
And then their talking points for a while was that, well, we don't need a platform because we have all these announcements.
That's what made me think that they didn't have one.
Yeah, so to staple them all together, but clearly that's not. There was a little bit of misalignments, between what was actually done.
Because my assessment of the Conservative Party of late in terms of the communication strategy is that they try to win the nanosecond. So again, with each of these policies on any given day, isolated in a vacuum, they can make them sound good. But when you have the platform document, they're all put together, and you see how they work together or don't. At this point, I was seeing that those individual, that individual policy in a vacuum alone, you're selling it, okay, it might sound great and all this, but 3 days ago you had this policy and these two don't work together. Was I was noticing with Mr. Carney when he was like presenting a certain platform one day, I think there was the trades policy, and then he did the housing policy with the prefab stuff, and then a couple of days later there was the lumber policy, and all three of them seemed to
the entire platform is interconnected. It's about how can this feed into that? How can we build housing in a way that builds our economy, in a way that builds our clean energy goals? And I think with Poilievre, it is not about that. It's about what can get us the best headline, what can get us the best polling numbers. And I think that because of that, when you look at it on paper, as you do during an election, and as you do during an election where people are very well informed, you see the faults in that. And I think that that's why I am of the view that Poilievre did not do as well as I think he did fine at the debate. I think he's a very strong debater. So he by no means was bad. I think in terms of reaching his potential, I think that it was not a great debate night for him at all, because when you try to measure yourself, one, it's not natural to him, so he's stumbling over his words quite a bit. And two, when he's not putting all this grandiosity behind it, you see a lot of those flaws. When they're all being listed in a debate format, you're seeing, well, that doesn't quite make sense.
Right.
This doesn't quite follow. This is you sort of reduced it to the lowest denominator in terms of how can we make this the highest level, most basic understanding of taxes bad for business. So we're going to cut business taxes so that they grow. And you don't have a reason to defend that. You don't have costed or the research behind it, or credibility behind it, because he has not been building his credibility over the past however many years since he's been leader. He's been building his brand, but not his credibility. When you don't have that, it really does fade away. And I think that comes from also him underestimating Carney quite a bit. I think he underestimated Jagmeet quite a bit. But as a whole, I think that I think we're really starting to see the cracks in what happens when you don't have a plan based off of getting to the end goals, when you don't map out your objectives and think what's the best way to get there, when instead you say, what do we get there? How do we fit it? What do we want to do? How do we fit it towards our end objectives? And that's what you see with Carney, and that they're saying these are our objectives, our overarching objectives: build, unite, and then two others that are not at the top of my head.
Protect and secure.
Yes, build, unite, protect, secure. How do we reach that? And how do we build our platform from there? Instead, they looked at what is going well, what's going to poll, and be the most popular in terms of points, and then built their platform from the bottom up. Whereas I feel like the Liberals built their platform from the top down, and that's what people are seeing, and that's why it's so interconnected and a really well-rounded platform compared to one that's a little bit flimsy, one that's a little bit too top line, and one that doesn't quite make sense when you hold it up to a magnifying glass.
So from what I could say, it's sort of like the Liberal one, like you said, there's a target and everything flows from it, whereas the Conservative one would be probably like a series of micro-segmentations and focus group results.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cobbled together. Okay. Yeah. So I guess the final sort of assessment question with regard to the Conservative platform might be Harsha's question, but would they have been better off taking the hit from not publishing a platform at all?
Would they have politically? I think, honestly, yeah. I think that they would have. Because I think that in the end, they waited too long because they wanted to wait till after early voting, because I think that they were hoping that there was going to be a big push for early voting, and that they were going to get some good headwinds on the very engaged voter base that would look at it, and that they're very engaged, so we're going to get them voting early, and they're the ones who are going to poke holes. And then the ones who are less engaged, who won't poke holes, we're going to get them on election day. But I think that what happened was a lot of people were waiting. A lot of Canadians are smarter than they give them credit for. I see someone in the chat saying, I think he underestimated the intelligence of Canadians, and I think that's absolutely true. In that a lot of people, I do think, waited. In that you got the people who are going to vote Conservative no matter what, voting for them in the first round. We did get a lot of early voting. That is 100% true. And I think that early voting benefited all parties, and that all tides lift, high tides lift all ships. Right. But now, in the last week of the election, we got the top line scary part of the Liberal platform out, and now we're seeing, oh well, that actually does make sense. It does hold up to scrutiny. It does. When I hear all of this, and also the scary parts are now being covered up by, not covered up, but are now being framed in the way that the Liberal Party wants to frame them. Whereas now, going into the week of the election, the Conservatives is now seeing how their platforms being taken by media, is being taken by the public, and they've sort of lost control of that narrative. And now they're going to be spending the last week of the election trying to win that back, instead of using the weekend to let it settle, coming in fresh with a strong strategy to win those sort of voters for election day. I think they're sort of caught with their pants down a little bit, and I think people see that. But that also comes, I think, from rewriting their platform after the Carney platform. If they had had a stronger one, it could have been better. But in the way that they did it, I think in the end, it's just going to get more of those election day voters away from them. Because in the end, I don't see any demographic of Canadian that will be better off by that platform. And I think that that's consistent with what we're seeing in terms of expert analysis across media, in terms of what we're seeing in terms of people going through and really costing this out, is that in the long run, yes, we might see some cost reductions in the beginning, like we saw with the carbon tax, but it doesn't quite pan out. Is it going to ruin the whole entire Canadian economy? I don't think so. I don't think Pierre Poilievre is the worst thing for the Canadian economy by any means, but I don't think that also this platform is going to guide him. I think they have a much larger platform that lays out the full plans. I think he will adapt as we have seen him adapt through the campaign and even before. So I'm not going to pretend like it's a catastrophic thing, but the platform itself does not really support the argument that he's the best position for prime minister, and that's the best party to hold government, which is not the best thing going into the last week of the campaign.
And with regard to setting us up for what we need to do in order to, if we're going to diversify as well.
I have no idea what he would do if he was prime minister. I have no trust. In my mind, I fear the worst. I have hope that the Canadian public would respond negatively to the worst, as they did during the election, which would cause him to temper himself down more.
Right.
We saw this a lot actually with Doug Ford at the beginning, where the Doug Ford who started in 2019, I think, is so different from the Doug Ford we have now.
Right.
And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Poilievre took somewhat of a similar path, where like he made a lot of mistakes in the first couple of years, learned a lot for the second couple of years. But I think I think we're in a place where we can't afford a lot of mistakes. We need somebody who's strong at the helm. We need an adult at the helm. We can't deal with that sort of. We don't have time for the training wheels. We need to start with the training wheels off. And I think that Canadians are really seeing that, and that we're not going to hope that in the last half of the mandate it gets us what we really want, because we need somebody who's going to start off strong, especially because we know the United States is going to come. And we're going to have to start immediately after the election, even before cabinet is made.
Right. Wow, Josh, thanks so much. That's
Thank
fantastic.
you. Thank you.
And trust me, it's like we are very happy that brevity is not your strong point. It's not ours either. So it works quite well. You have a home here. We understand you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. See, most of the times I talk about these policy things that people are like, "Oh, okay," and then they sort of drown me out in the end as I keep going. But this was very great. I got to get all of my thoughts out. We got to have some good, informed, and I think very fair. I think we gave credit where credit was due to all the parties, which is the most important, because I never want to pretend. I never want to over sensationalize the negative things about any party. I think all the party platforms are worth the read, and I think we in the end, I think our democracy is better off for the way this election went. I really hope that, in my mind, I do hope Carney wins, obviously, by what I said. But in the end, I hope we have a more policy-focused political arena moving forward, where we really look for an informed, where the general public is looking to be informed voters, and looking a little bit more critically at what parties are saying, just like we did today, where we looked critically at every party.
Oh, I'm so glad that you agreed to come on. And yes, as Mr. Grizzly says, we would love to have you on again.
Yes, I would love it. I would love to. I'd love to.
You might be getting an invitation for an opportunity a little earlier than you think.
Excellent. Amazing. Thank you.
Just showing a little ankle there. Showing a little ankle. I'm sure the kids and Cubs really appreciate it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to follow the chat here on this because I'm not at, as you can tell, I'm not at my usual studio here. The boss is there. But absolutely, I have a feeling the kids and Cubs have been asking for this type of stuff, going deep into stuff. And
it's great. I love seeing everybody's comments as it goes along. It's
fun, isn't it?
I really enjoy it. I really like it.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing your knowledge. Thank you for agreeing. It was really short notice, and for being so enthusiastic about saying yes. Warms our heart, definitely. But yeah, we like I said, we were reading your analysis, and we just said, I mean, this is someone clearly who cares about the issue, cares about being fair, and clearly cares about actually going to read the source material before commenting, not just giving the hot take. So yeah, we were glad that we were able to bring your voice to our audience, and I'm sure that they will all go to bed much more informed tonight.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the entire audience for listening. It was fun, very fun.
All right, we will see you soon. Okay. Have a great day.
Yes, goodbye.
Bye. All right, and let's see if I can make this happen. Oh, there we go. All right, kids and Cubs. We hope that you enjoyed the show. That's the end of the show. We hope that you enjoyed it. We loved making it for you. Remember that sharing is caring, and word of mouth is priceless. So please, if you do have the opportunity, tell your peeps and poops all about us, because we really appreciate it when you do. Now, kids and Cubs, if you would like to make sure you do not miss an episode because, maybe you're on the go. Busy people out there doing democracy, right? And maybe you need to have us in your ears while you're going, driving to work or, making sure you go to that next protest or that type of thing. Well, hey, now you can because of the Ray Girl who sponsors our pod page, podpage.com/the-true-north-eager-beaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you go there and click subscribe or click that QR code that just appeared on the screen and click subscribe, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. No fuss, no muss. You have to do no work. We make it super easy because, hey, we like to help. So just scan that, go over there and subscribe. And that way you will always be up to date. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us in other ways, well, maybe you would like to help us with those algorithms online by joining our YouTube page as a member or as a subscriber. True North Eager Beaver Media is our YouTube page. And if you go there, we have 3 buttons for you: like, share, and subscribe. Please click them, lick them, or flick them. It makes us very happy when you do. And as we said, it helps us out with the algorithm. So thanks so much, eh? And if you happen to be listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please give us some stars and some reviews. That also very much helps us out with the algorithm. And of course, if you're watching, when you go to the YouTube page, if you're able to go there in the morning, you get to chat with the other members of the Best Damn Fam in all of podcasting, a really great group of people. So there's a lot of advantages to be able to watch on our YouTube page if you happen to be watching on any other platforms. All right. If you are willing to help us in yet other ways, kits and cubs, we do incur some costs in bringing this show to you. And if you would like to help with that because you like what we do and you would like to encourage us to do more, well, we would be very grateful for that support. That QR code that just appeared in the corner will bring you to our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. And that's where you will find what we call affectionately the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, where you can contribute to our efforts to fight the scourge that is dry beaver. So, kids and cubs, if you would like to proudly do your duty to make sure that you keep your favorite beaver moist, yum, 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 then a little donation in our tip jar will help do that. Buy your favorite beaver a cup of hot chocolate or your favorite grizzly a mug of dark coffee. And, a little add a beaver, add a grizzly makes us feel good. So thank you so much for all of your support. Now, if you're not able to support us financially, please do not worry, because the gifts of your participation and attention are the ones that matter the most to us. And we do want to hear from you. So please write to us. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address. Let us know what you think about the show. If you have some ideas for some guests, hey, all of that is good. If you have some constructive criticism, also, we love to hear it. Please be gentle, though. We are delicate creatures. And that's also if you want to make a contribution and want to make sure that you are buying Canadian, avoiding the US CE Tech Bros, then direct transfer through your bank to our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, ensures that your transaction is 100% Canadian, and bonus, we get 100% of your donation. So it's win-win-win. If you also wanted to talk to us through other ways, well, you have our socials. At TrueEager, at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, and on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver at Facebook, our original home on the web. And if you're listening here on our YouTube channel, either live or after the show, right down here in the comments section, just leave us a little something. We do read everything. We're not able to get back to everyone, but all of it goes back into making the show better, and we thank you for your contributions. As well, remember, some of you have asked for a Q&A show, so please write to us at truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com with your question. If you have a question about politics that you'd like us to answer, you want our take on something, or you want some information about how we do the show, all the questions are good, so please send them to us. Once we have enough of them, we'll do a Q&A compilation show for you. Because democracy is something that you do, remember, kids and cubs, that there is a Quebec Liberal leadership race, and that those results will be coming sometime in June. If you are in Manitoba, the Progressive Conservative leadership race is nearing its close, and we will get the results on the 26th. The 22nd was the last day to get your mail-in ballot in. So if you haven't done that, unfortunately, it's now too late to have your vote counted. And of course, for the federal election, well, 5 more days, right? Before the big voting day. There's no more early voting and there's no more voting early at your returning office. If you have a mail in ballot, please make sure it is in on time so that it can be counted. But for everything else, it will be on the 28th of the month where everybody is going to show up and vote. As Mr. Grizzly mentioned, 7.3 million Canadians voted early. I do not think that also factors in ballots at the returning offices. It might just be the early voting at the early voting stations. That's pretty close to 2 million a day. So get some cubs. It seems that the momentum from the first day did continue. Again, hopefully that means it's a sign of high voter turnout, because we would really like to see more and more Canadians do democracy, no matter who you vote for. So we are very, very encouraged by that. So again, over the next few days, find out about the policies, find out more about your candidates. If you have a preferred candidate, this is the time to do some door knocking and phone banking and literature distribution and all that kind of stuff, right? This is the last rush. If you have a car and you have the ability to volunteer and help people get to some polling stations, call your party of preference and volunteer to help with that. All efforts are good on the day. All right. And also remember, if you see anything going on at a polling station that shouldn't be going on, please do report it to Elections Canada. It is very, very important, right? There should not be any campaigning in your polling stations, any of that type of stuff. And we've seen a couple of things going on the web and that have been reported. And, it's not cool. And it seems to be, again, happening all in favor of one party these days. So, please try to keep things at the polls itself neutral, all right? Because we should not be at the polling station is not where we should be trying to persuade each other. The time for that was before. Okay, your vote is yours and it's personal. All right. Words of wisdom, Mr. Grizzly left them to you before he went, so I will leave you with those ones. Get some cubs. It could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. All right. And now, your Mr. Oh, well, maybe I should also remove those QR codes there before I go and do the closing credits. That might be a little smart thing to do. All right. Mr. Beaver. Ah! I took it out and it came back. Funny how that happens. Okay, that was a fat finger thing. Mr. Beaver, please cue the cog. For some reason, it will not cue. Let's try that one more time.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.
All right, kids and cubs. Just a little bit of information because we didn't do it at the beginning of the show, of course, with regard to the polling. took a look at it. With Poll Tracker, there was a little bit of a narrowing again yesterday, whereas the day before there was a bit of a widening. So things have come back with 338. It's the opposite. There was a bit of a narrowing the day before, and yesterday a little bit of a widening. So things seem to be a little bit remarkably consistent for all intents and purposes. With regard to the polling, no major changes. Let's see. Be interesting to see if there's a shift near the end with regard to the Conservative vote, based on the press that they will get from the platform. What people are telling people to look into is we mentioned in the show previously that majority minority might play itself out in BC. There is a possibility that it could play itself out in Quebec, depending on how big the pickup that Monsieur Blanchet has received over the past couple of days since the French debate and his appearance on Tout le monde en parle. It's a small one so far, but it is enough to flip a few more seats into the Blocs column. But so far, a lot of the polling is still showing that the Liberals are safely enough ahead in Quebec. But that's another place we might be looking to on election night. As for the markets, looked at them a little bit too. They have opened now, so I do not. Might want to take a look to see where it is. But the pre-market opening for the Americas markets was showing that a decent day was in store. We're showing a pre-market the Dow up 1.75%, the S&P 2.25%, and the Nasdaq at greater than 2.5%. So those are usually bigger days. The market has opened, and right now I am seeing higher than that openings. So I'm seeing a 2.36 for the Dow at the moment, 2.75 for the S&P, nearly 3.75 for the Nasdaq at the moment, 3.5 for the Russell 2000, for the TSX Composite, 1.25 there. So it's looking like a decent day on all the markets for North America at the moment. With regard to Europe, taking a little quick look because the markets there are also already open. Everything is in positive territory like it was earlier, with a decent amounts. 2.42 the maximum at the DAX in Germany, and 0.82 with the FTSE 100 in the United Kingdom, but the FTSE 250 is at 1.45. And the Asian markets overnight were also, for the most part, positive, if my recollection is good. And yes, indeed, the Shanghai Composite was the only one that was down by about 0.1%, and everything else was up. Some pretty good amounts too. Taiwan was up 4.5% on the day. The Hang Seng, which took a pretty big hit, was up about 2.4% about. But a decent day in all of those. So hopefully, Donald Trump basically saying yesterday, after the day before, musing about firing Jerome Powell, that no, he probably was not going to ultimately do that. Stabilized the markets, at least for now, until the next thing, right? Okay, kids and cubs, remember, if you haven't planned your vote yet, please do so. Talk to all the people around you. Talk about being excited to vote. Ask if other people are planning their vote. If not, tell them why not. And when it comes voting day, friends don't let friends do democracy alone. So bring someone with you. All right. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a beaverific day.